Hi, I'm Ellie and welcome to my little corner of the internet, and you'll notice that I'm not in my Toyota Hiatus Arcadia today, but that doesn't matter because I have a vlog of my visit to Lady Elliot Island. I decided to stay there for a couple of days. It's on the Southern Great Barrier Reef and it's meant to have some of the best snorkeling in the world. It's just north of Fraser Island, which I went to in a previous vlog if you want to check that out up here, but otherwise here is what I got up to and my verdict. I'm Ellie Wilder and you're watching Wilder in Motion. Lady Elliot is a small island, but it is quite a bit further away than Fraser, so it's best accessed by plane. They have this little light craft. It is a private island, so the planes and everything are organised in conjunction with either the day trips or the overnight accommodation. I ended up staying for 3 nights because it's pretty hard to get more than a 1-night stay, but they had a 3-night cancellation, so I just filled that. So it was a really nice scenic low flight because it's only about 40 minutes over the water, and this gives you a really good idea of the reef and how it's positioned around the island. So towards the top is the ocean side, and then extending much further down is the lagoon side, which is what's making the water a different colour. So there is a bit of a break wall made of rocks and coral that is sheltering the coral in the lagoon, and so that keeps the waves from crashing in and damaging everything, and provides a really healthy coral area for marine life to be attracted to. And so this means there's 2 main areas to snorkel, the ocean side as well as that lagoon side, so there is a variety of habitat. And this was my first time landing on a grass runway, so it was a little bumpy, but it was okay. I went for a quick explore around the island. The runway basically cuts right through the middle. And then went to the ocean side to take a glass bottom boat tour out to the deep water, which is where we saw these manta rays. It's a long way to snorkel out here, even though you can, so I didn't end up doing that, so I was glad that I was able to still see the rays hanging around towards the very back parts of the reef. Then I got in for a snorkel around the ocean side. There was so many fish, such a big variety, lots of different sizes, and on this ocean side there was some quite big fish as well, and as you can see, lots of different colours. The coral is a bit lighter. It's not like vibrant coral that you might see in photos and things like that. That's not like because it's damaged or anything. The guides assured us that this is just because the hard coral isn't generally as colourful as soft corals, but as you can see by the amount of coral growing so closely together, this is a healthy reef system, and that's why it also attracts so many different types of fish. The island's also a green zone, which means it's a no-take zone, so there's no fishing allowed off the waters, which really helps. And after the snorkel, we just caught the end of the sunset as we were coming out of the water. On the second day, I decided to go for a walk around the island, and I saw a bunch of the birds, which the island's very well known for. Fortunately, I wasn't there in the peak of bird season because I do think it would be overwhelming, the number of birds when they're at their peak. They said there was about 20 times the amount in the height of the season, and there's no real sand, it's all kind of crushed up coral, so you do have to wear reef shoes everywhere, but it was still fine to walk around once you had those, and it was really interesting seeing the way they kind of fossilized together. Then I decided to take a quick dip in the lagoon side. I only went for a little explore this first time. The lagoon is much shallower, so you can only go in at certain times of the day when it is at high tide, but I did see an octopus for the first time, and it even changed colour right in front of me to blend in with the coral, so that was an experience I hadn't had snorkeling before, and I ended up seeing about 4 of them, so that was something a bit different from the fish. Then I went around to the ocean side again to check out the bigger fish that they have over there. I think generally the bigger fish were on the ocean side. I did see like some giant cod as well, but there was still some fairly reasonable sized fish around the lagoon side. Because the water is much deeper as well, You are sometimes a little bit further away, but the reef is really varied. And we also saw these really cute birds everywhere. They didn't fly though. So the sun came out. It was quite rainy in the time that I was there, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to go for a reef walk. So since it's low tide and you can't snorkel, but you can walk in the sandy patches around the little reef islands, and it's kind of like snorkeling without actually getting wet. Then you put the little tube in the water and that creates like a window so you can see down, but I think most of the fish retreated out to the deeper water, so there wasn't a whole lot to see. Then I crossed over the runway back to the lighthouse side of the island, because this is where I could watch the sunset over the water, which is a rare thing because I live on the eastern coast of Australia, so don't really get to experience this. And that flag out there is where the snorkel trail is, but it's also low tide at this time, so there was no one out there as we were watching the pink skies, and you can see just how many birds there are there. On day 3, I decided to start back in the ocean side to go a bit further out to some of the more deep water, and I encountered this turtle. As you can see, its back right flipper had been damaged and also a bit of its shell, so I think when it was a bit younger it might have gotten attacked by something, but obviously it's doing okay now. This one did look different to the other turtles that I ended up seeing. Definitely looked older and a different shape as well and bigger, so I think this might have been a different species of turtle that was more common on that ocean side. And this is a parrotfish. Saw lots of those and they get quite big, and these were also quite big fish here. Not sure if you get the perspective. They were probably about 40 or 50 centimeters long, and that was probably the largest parrotfish that I saw around there. Then I walked back along around the sand to get to the lagoon side. So you can see that the lagoon is kind of turned into a shelf of coral because the coral doesn't survive outside of the water, so it can only grow as high as the low tide line, which creates this kind of flat top, which at high tide you can float across, although it is a little difficult with flippers. You have to be really careful not to kick the coral. And this was the first turtle that I saw on the lagoon side, so it looks a bit more green than that other turtle. And these blackfish really do not like the turtles at all. They don't really like people either. And so yeah, I continued across and just saw so many different types of fish. I wish I knew what they were all called, but they weren't as colourful as some of the fish that I'd seen in places like Vanuatu, but there were so many different kinds. Some of them super plentiful, and sometimes you would just see one of a certain type of fish and no others. And here's that blackfish again. They seem to go for the eyes of the turtle. Definitely if I stayed still for too long, they would even come up to me. They just very territorial fish, I suppose. And this was the closest I got to a turtle. It literally started coming right towards me, and I was getting a little freaked out because they could definitely eat my finger off if they wanted to, but then it switched directions and started swimming off. But it was so good how clear the water was. I mean, this shot is just crazy. And then in the distance I looked around and I saw a reef shark, and I've never seen a shark in the ocean before. Luckily it was just this little reef shark, but yes, I didn't need to get any closer than that. And then yeah, from this point onwards, so many turtles. I think I was just in the wrong part of the lagoon on the first day that I went in, because as I swam more around the lagoon over the back, there were just turtles everywhere. And these ones seem a little bit older given they're looking a bit dirtier on their shells. And this was the closest I got to a clownfish looking thing. This was some of the only soft coral that I saw throughout. Mostly it was this hard coral, and as I went further north to other parts of the Great Barrier Reef, which will be in upcoming vlogs, the coral did get a bit brighter. The next day I went to this place called the Arches at the recommendation of one of the guides, which was really cool, so I could swim through. So this was on the ocean side, sort of out the back towards the deeper area. One thing that's really clever is they had these snorkel ropes which gave you a guide so you didn't completely lose your bearings or completely drift out. And so those were roped along the back of the reef. And this was an eco resort, so they were really good about trying to preserve everything and make sure that the coral didn't get damaged and guiding people in the right times and places to get into the water. Snorkeling really is the primary activity, so that's pretty much all I did the whole time at Lady Elliot, although some people do come for the bird watching. I had another quick little wander around to finish up my trip and just hung out for the final afternoon before heading back on their little plane to return to the mainland. Ultimately, I'm really glad that I went to Lady Elliot. There was such a variety of marine life and it was so cool seeing the manta ray and the octopus and the turtles, because those are things that I hadn't really gotten that close to before. And since going, I've been to lots of other parts of the Great Barrier Reef, and this one definitely does win with the amount of marine life as well as the huge variety. So I definitely recommend, if you are in the area going to visit, I think 2 or 3 nights probably is the right amount of time. Well, I hope you found this video interesting or entertaining or useful. Linked in the description will be my previous van life content if you'd like to check that out. Or subscribe if you want to catch new van life videos every single Saturday except for last week. Sorry about that, it was very hectic. But otherwise be sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.